All right, I think we'll get started here tonight. Neil, it looks like you might have to turn or stop screen sharing for a moment. All right, thank you very much. My name is Dillon Tabish with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I am the Regional Information and Education Program Manager here based out of Kalispell. And tonight we've also got Regional Wildlife Manager Neil Anderson. And we're here on the eve of the general hunting season to share some information about chronic wasting disease and the 2020 management and monitoring efforts that will be going on that's relevant to hunters across Montana, but particularly Northwest Montana. So Neil's going to kind of share just a general overview of chronic wasting disease, what we've been doing in the past, just a quick reminder of kind of what is chronic wasting disease. And then we're going to get into some of the changes that hunters can expect in 2020. So our goal is for this to be kind of a relatively short, informative presentation. It is being recorded. So if you can't sit through the remainder of it, this meeting will be posted on our Facebook page, our FWP Region 1 Facebook page, as well as our FWP website. So you'll be able to come back and look at, listen to Neil's presentation. At the end, we are going to have an opportunity for public comments and questions. And so I guess not really comments, but questions is what we really are here for, is to help answer any questions you may have about chronic wasting disease. And so there's instructions on the website right below this video. You'll see a phone number to dial into. And that phone number is a great, easy way for you to just get into this meeting and ask any questions that Neil will hopefully be able to answer. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Neil, and you can take it from there. Thanks, Neil. Oh, Neil, I think you're on mute.
I sure am.
There you are.
Hey, thanks, Dillon. Thanks everybody for joining. I have to admit, this is a little bit different for me. I'm used to presenting to a group of folks, being able to see faces in person, but we'll try to get through this best we can, and hopefully you'll have some questions for us, and hopefully this will be fairly informative. As Dillon mentioned, we want to talk a little bit about chronic wasting disease, and we're going to focus on Region 1, so the northwest corner of the state, not all of the state, but focus on Region 1, just give you an idea of what we found last year, and really what that means for surveillance this year. So without much more discussion, I'll go in and start the program here. So again, this is about presentation is about chronic wasting disease, and again, we're going to focus on Northwest Montana.
Neil, it looks like you got to switch those display settings.
Okay, won't let me do that, but we'll try it over here.
It won't let you get up into that display settings and do the swap.
Yeah, I'll try again here. Sorry about that, folks, but we'll, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, that worked.
Oh, it just switched.
Again.
There it is, right there.
Is that good?
Nope, it's back to showing the.
Okay.
That right there, whatever it is right there, just leave it on that
Okay.
setting.
We'll leave it there. Sorry about that. Okay. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about CWD. I'm sure a lot of folks have heard about CWD now, chronic wasting disease, but it's a slow moving neurologic disease. It's fatal. It focuses on deer, elk, and moose. It is a disease of deer, elk, and moose. It's caused by this misfolded protein or prion. So it's a little bit different than what most of us think about in diseases like viruses, bacteria, maybe parasites. This is actually caused by this protein that has a weird shape to it, and the body doesn't seem to recognize it, and so it does not it does not break that protein down. So that protein tends to accumulate, and the body also sees that protein and starts to replicate it within the body. So that you get these large accumulations of these prions, and they have a tendency to concentrate in the animal's lymph system and also in the nervous system in the brain. And it's that concentration in the brain primarily that causes what we see in terms of classic CWD, and I'll show you a little bit about that in the next slide or two. One of our concerns about chronic wasting disease is that it has been predicted to produce population declines in heavily infected herds. In fact, in Colorado, Wyoming, some of those states that have had this for a long time, they have actually seen population declines due to this disease. So it's a disease that we're highly concerned about. We want to try to keep it at bay as best we can. Obviously, we would like to not have it, but we do have it here. So our goal is to try to keep that that prevalence or the number of deer, percentage of deer out there that have CWD fairly low, if at all possible. Symptoms, classic CWD is what you might see in those two pictures over there, that elk and the deer. Those are end-stage infections. So in other words, these animals are about ready to die. They're emaciated. You see excess salivation. You see droopy ears. The head might be hanging a little bit low. They have wide posture because they're probably unstable on their feet. Those animals are really close to dying. Animals in the early stages of CWD may show almost no symptoms at all. At least you may not be able to detect them. So it makes it a little bit of a difficult issue in trying to determine, which animals have CWD and which ones don't. There are other diseases that cause similar symptoms. So you also have to be aware of that. So every animal that looks like this may not have CWD. Infected animals can shed those prions before they even show symptoms. So they can look fairly healthy, but if they're infected, they might start shedding those prions into the environment or sharing them with other deer. It can take up to 2.5 years from the time of infection until death. So these animals live for about 2 to 2.5 years before they die. Transmission is primarily to be animal to animal. That's the most common means. But this is a very hardy protein, prion. It can get in the soil, can persist there for quite a while, and it can contaminate the environment. So deer or elk or moose that consumes soil, for instance, with this prion in it could get CWD. There's a study out there that even suggests that some plants may be able to draw that protein up through the normal process where they're drawing up nutrients, and you may be able to find it in soil. There haven't been a lot of studies yet that confirm that it's actually infectious at that stage, but they have been able to detect the prion. So that is a little bit of a concern. Infected animals, they shed the prion through saliva, feces, urine, for most of the course of their infection. And it's really any fluids that are in the body even upon death. So as that carcass, as an animal dies and it starts to break down, you can find prions in any of those bodily fluids. It is a disease of cervids or the deer family. It's not known to infect pets, cows, horses, dogs, birds, other carnivores. It is, at least for now, we believe a disease of deer, elk, moose, and caribou. It's not known to be transmissible to people, and that's based on the fact that it's been out there for a long time and we've not documented any human cases, even though people have probably eaten infected deer. But regardless of that, the Center of Disease Control, World Health Organizations, any of the world or the health officials recommend not eating positive animals. So if you know if an animal is positive, the recommendation is to not eat it. We get a lot of questions about predators and scavengers and their role in transmission. There's not been a lot of work on this, but the work that has been done suggests that predators stop the buildup of those prions in infected deer and elk. In other words, an animal that is sick from CWD, it's not as fast, not as responsive, easier target for predators, and they have a tendency to kill them at a faster rate than they would healthy animals. In one study, mountain lions were determined to kill CWD infected animals 4 times greater than uninfected deer. But we do know that prions can pass through the digestive tract and remain infective. So an animal that consumes these, it can pass that prion through their feces. But at least that animal is not on the landscape shedding those prions. The true role of carnivores and predators isn't really understood. But again, there's a lot of folks that believe that they may actually help stop the buildup of prions, at least in those infected animals. Live infected animals are still considered to be the primary source of transmission. The other thing that we do get concerned about is hunter movement of carcasses. So if a hunter moves an animal, especially the brain and spinal column, and then deposits that or throws that out in the woods, that can be a source of infection for deer or elk. And we know that we have the ability to move those things long distances. Just to give you an idea of what we found up here in Northwest Montana last year. So we first found CWD in a white-tailed deer within the town of Libby in May of 2019. That triggered a whole series of events where we established what we call a CWD management zone. And it's typically a radius around about 10 miles around where we found that positive. And what we want to do is we want to go in there and try to determine how prevalent CWD is in that population. In other words, what percentage of the animals test positive for CWD. In order to do that, we actually issued 600 antlerless white-tailed deer B licenses for that area, for that CWD management zone. Again, that's that 10-mile radius. And we also established a CWD sampling station in the town of Libby. And we had mandatory testing of elk, deer, and moose in that area. And there was also a carcass restriction. So you couldn't move a carcass outside of that shaded area, outside that 10-mile radius. Again, this was all an effort to try to determine what the prevalence was in that area. In addition to that, because we found that first positive within the urban area, the town of Libby, we wanted to find out if prevalence was greater in the urban area than it was in the area outside of town. So we collected a random sample from the area within the urban area of Libby using hunter harvested animals. We had some game damage that occurred within that area. We tested those animals. And we also conducted agency removals where we actually trapped and removed white-tailed deer in order to test them. We did not include roadkills or symptomatic animals because they have a tendency to bias that estimate. So they were tested, but not part of the prevalence estimate. So what did we find? So in total in the Libby urban surveillance area, again, this is the area right in and around Libby, the urban area, we tested 176 white-tailed deer. 84 of those were male, 91 were female. One, for some reason, we didn't get a sex on it. We found 23 positives out of that sample for a 13.1% prevalence. That's pretty high. Anything over 5% is something that we really are concerned about, and it's cause for trying to do some sort of management action to try to get that prevalence back down. We did, again, I mentioned we tested symptomatic animals, in other words, animals that looked like they had CWD. And we also tested roadkills, which tend to have a higher prevalence than the non-road-killed animals. And we found 16 symptomatic animals. 9 of those were positive for CWD. We tested 75 roadkills, 5 of those were positive. And we had 17 other deer that died for one reason or another, and 2 of those were positive. So we actually found a fair number of positives right in and around Libby in that urban area. Within the management zone, so this is the area, the large area, that 10-mile radius, it excludes the deer that we tested in the Libby surveillance area. So we're not using those animals. We're just using the animals outside of the city limits and outside of that urban area. We tested 621 white-tailed deer from that CWD management zone, again, the 10-mile radius. And we found, tested 319 males, 301 males, and one that we did not get the sex. I think it was a hunter harvested animal sample that was turned into us, and they didn't indicate the sex. We found 22 positives out of that group of animals, which gives us a prevalence about 3.5%. So about 3 to 4 deer out of 100 in that surveillance area, the management zone, test positive for CWD. We did test 77 mule deer. We found 1 positive. Again, that was within the management zone. And we did test some moose, and we actually found 2 positive moose that were up on the edge of the CWD management zone. One was to the northwest, and one was kind of to the east, right along the edge of it. which is a little bit unusual. We're really not sure what to make of that. Typically, we wouldn't expect to find many CWD positive moose. So we're kind of looking into that. And it's something to be concerned about, but honestly, we're not exactly sure what's going on there. So just to give you a little bit of a summary. So in that the Libby surveillance area, again, that's the urban area, 13% prevalence in whitetail deer. That's 13 out of every 100 deer in that area likely carries CWD. If you look just at the bucks, they had a higher prevalence. About 15.5% of the bucks were positive compared to 11% of the does. In the Libby urban management zone, again, that's the bigger area outside of the urban area. 3.5 prevalence. So again, 3 to 4 out of every 100 deer, whitetail deer, are CWD positive. And the prevalence is pretty similar between bucks and does, about 3.5% for each. Again, we did find one mule deer positive and two moose positive. So what does that mean for the future? So we know we have CWD, we know we have a high prevalence in and around Libby, and we know we have a lower prevalence, but it's still there in the management zone around Libby. What we really don't know is how far that may have spread. And so that's what we're trying to do this year, is try to ascertain or determine, has it spread wider than that? Or is it pretty much contained in that area right around Libby? So our goal this year is to try to get a lot of samples in the area outside of the Libby area, and to monitor prevalence also within the management zone. So in hunting districts 100, 103, and 104, and those are the districts that kind of all join right there at Libby. And we want to get 200 male and 200 female samples out of each district. So that's a total of 400 in hunting district 100, 400 in hunting district 103, and 400 in hunting district 104. And also increase and maximize our samples of mule deer and elk. So if you're kind of adding that up, that's 1,200 samples just out of those 3 districts alone. Even at a larger area, we want to even test farther out. And so we kind of grouped hunting districts to try to maximize our ability to collect samples. And in that larger area, we're just trying to determine whether CWD is there or not. And so when we're trying to do that, we will take every sample that we can get, including roadkill, symptomatics, hunter harvested deer, and elk moose. And so in hunting district 101, 102, 109, and 110, we grouped those into a group. And then we also grouped hunting districts 121 and 122 south of that Libby area into a group. And then hunting district 120 stands on its own. And in each one of those groupings, we want to get 300 points, or about basically 300 samples from that area. So if you add it all up, we are looking to get about 2,100 samples from primarily whitetail deer, out of that kind of western part of region 1. In order to do that, we made a decision to change our check stations into sampling stations. We're a little bit concerned about the volume of traffic that might come through there and the safety due to the time it takes to take samples. Plus, we wanted to maximize our ability to help folks turn in samples. And so we've turned our check stations into CWD sampling stations. Because we did that, stopping at those stations is now voluntary. We're not going to run the Canoe Gulch check station. We're going to invest more heavily in the Libby, a sampling station right in the middle of Libby. But all the stations, we will be looking to collect samples. So we encourage folks to stop by, and we'll help you collect samples and get those submitted and try to get the results to you as quickly as possible. Our sampling stations will be at the Kalispell office Monday through Friday, basically 8 to 5 p.m. So during the work week. In Libby, we're going to have a CWD sampling station at the Montana Department of Transportation shop on Highway 2. It's right on the edge of Libby. And we're going to run that Saturday through Monday, 11 a.m. to dusk. Again, the Canoe Gulch check station won't be operated. On US Highway 2 west of Kalispell, about 6 miles west of Kalispell, we're going to run that station Saturdays and Sundays, 11 a.m. to dusk. We're also going to run one in the Swan, even though that's not in our survey area. We'd still like to get some samples from over there. That's on Highway 83 north of Swan Lake. And that one will also be run Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to dusk. In Thompson Falls, the station will be at the normal check station site, but it'll be a CWD sampling station, and that's on Highway 200 west of Thompson Falls. And that will be run actually Saturday through Monday, 11 a.m. to dusk. Olney, which is on Highway 83.
Actually, that's 93. Sorry, Neil, that's my typo. I sent you. That one
Oh,
only
okay.
supposed to be 93. Sorry about that.
Yep. Sorry. Yep. Highway 93, near the lower Stillwater Lake, just south of Olney. That one will be Saturday and Sundays, 11 a.m. to dusk. But then we also have a station that we operated on Mondays at the Lincoln County Fairground from, actually, I think that should be 11 a.m. to dusk as well. It says 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., but it should be 11 a.m. to dusk. So we're trying to keep the hours pretty consistent at the sampling stations. They'll be open primarily 11 a.m. to dusk. The days may differ a little bit, but weekends will be, we'll be open on weekends and then a few Mondays, depending on where you're at. If you do want to submit samples though, the Kalispell office will be open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 to submit samples. One of the things that we're trying to do in relation to what we found in Libby is it's try to address that high prevalence in that area right in and around Libby in the urban area. And so in our management plan that was passed by the commission, our goal is to reduce prevalence to below 5% and limit CWD movement out of that area. And so that's what we're going to try to do. So we're going to increase harvest and reduce in order to try to reduce density and reduce transmission rates and hopefully drive that prevalence down. In order to do that, we issued, the commission approved an either sex white-tailed bee license that's valid only in that CWD management zone. Again, that's at about 10-mile radius right around Libby. They're available to anybody over the counter, a limit of 1 per person, but no limit on the number of licenses sold. So far, I believe we've sold about 870 of those. So we have that going on in addition to the normal general tag that's available there. And then we're also looking to do later this winter is conduct deer removals in the urban area right in and around Libby. So similar to what we did last year. And our goal there is to try to reduce deer populations 25 to even up to 50% if we can. I don't know if we can do that, how successful we'll be. But again, our goal here is to try to keep CWD from increasing, try to lower that prevalence, and try to keep it from spreading to a greater area outside of where we know we have it. We are continuing to work with the city on a management plan because we are working within the city limits. We need to be working side by side with those folks, and they've been great, very helpful. I think we've had a good relationship with them, and I think that will continue. But we're still working on that plan and the details of those plans. And we're really going to put a big effort into eliminating feeding. One of the concerns we have is that when folks are feeding deer, they're concentrating deer around a food source. If one of them is sick, and if one of them should have CWD, the chances of transmission to other deer is greatly enhanced. And that might be one of the reasons why we see such a high prevalence in Libby. We know there were some deer feeding activities occurring there, which also have some natural sources like apple trees and things like that that have a tendency to congregate animals. So we're going to do what we can do to try to eliminate that feeding in an effort to help reduce that prevalence. Some of the changes you might notice for 2020, and this is statewide, not just here, because we've had places where we've had carcass restrictions. So in other words, we're like in Libby area where we found CWD. We didn't want people moving carcasses out of there and potentially moving CWD with those carcasses. So we had carcass restriction zones. Those were a little bit confusing to folks. And as a new CWD positive would pop up, we'd have a new carcass restriction zone. Sometimes that happened during the middle of the season. And it got to be very hard to communicate that, as well as it was pretty confusing for hunters. And I think we knew we were always going to get here at some point. And I think what the point where we kind of knew we would get to is that ultimately we probably need to change our own behaviors on how we handle carcasses of harvested animals. And so we're embarking on an education campaign in an effort to try to get hunters to not put carcasses out in the woods. So if you harvest an animal, you butcher that animal, you take the meat off of it. Don't take the rest of it, the brain, the spinal cord, any of that stuff, and throw it in the woods. We want you to get that to a landfill. Again, because movement of those carcasses, especially the brain and spinal column, it could be a potential way to transmit this disease even at great distances. So we're getting rid of all the carcass movement restrictions. We're going to an educational campaign and looking for support from hunters to stop discarding animals in the woods and use landfills instead. So in a lot of your areas, you can, after you butcher your animal, you can actually put the carcass in a garbage bag and put it in your garbage receptacle. Other areas, you can take it right to the landfill. In Flathead Valley, I know you can use the green boxes. That's not true in Lincoln County. I think they have restrictions on carcasses, but you can take it to the Libby landfill. We are still going to provide free testing for hunters. So if you submit a sample to us or you happen to send one in yourself, there's no charge for the testing. Those samples are now going to the Montana Department of Livestock Diagnostic Lab in Bozeman primarily. But I still think we're going to have a turnaround time of about 2 to 3 weeks, unfortunately. So from the time we get your sample or you submit it to the time you get the results, will probably still be around 2 to 3 weeks. It's not convenient, I understand that, but it's just kind of the way things are. It takes a while to even do those tests. And again, I want to remind folks that we're going to be running CWD sampling stations now. It is voluntary. So we're not asking folks who do not harvest an animal to stop. You don't have to stop. But we'd sure appreciate anybody who does harvest a deer, elk, or moose. Try to stop by. Let's try to get some samples. And it'll really help us, as well as anyone interested in deer and elk, have a better understanding of where CWD is in Northwest Montana. And with that, I will take any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. And so I want to give this chance for folks who are watching to call in. There's that phone number on the website. I'll share my screen so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Please call in now. You can see here's the information. If you have any questions for Neil, I'm happy to answer them. And I see a phone number while we're in there. I'm going to stop sharing. I think if I recognize that number right, that is Representative Gunderson. So Representative Gunderson, I'm going to unmute you to see if you have any questions or comments. And I think you unmute yourself there, Representative, if you'd like to talk. All right, maybe not. Well, I guess anybody who calls in, if you press *9, you'll raise your hand and I'll be able to unmute you. Oh, there we go.
Hi, Dillon.
Representative, there you are. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Hey,
no problem.
thank you, both you and Neil. Excellent presentation, and it's good to hear that we're in good hands with Neil and the rest of the Region 1 folks on this CWD problem. I look forward to working with you fairly closely here through the legislative process, because I'm sure we're going to have to work with funding and things like that. But I think we're going in the right direction, and things are looking good. I'm glad we're going to continue on like we did last year, and don't really have any questions. Like I say, I'm glad to hear everything's going in the same direction that we had everything going last year.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Yep, we're going to do our best.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Gunderson, and thank you for your leadership there on the Environmental Quality Council. For those who didn't follow that process, the Environmental Quality Council took up CWD as one of its priority issues and spent a lot of time learning about it. They came and visited Libby, and Representative Gunderson kind of helped explain the specifics of what's going on in Libby, because as Neil kind of mentioned, we were in a bit of a unique situation with CWD and Libby because it was really the first time in Montana where it popped up in an urban environment. So the EQC spent a lot of time on that. And if you want more information on what they reviewed in their report, that is on their website. And as the representative mentioned, that's something I'm sure the legislature will take up and review here this winter. So any other questions out there, please feel free to dial in. We'll hang out here as long as we need to and answer any questions. The call-in number's right there. And then there's the little meeting number you dial in, and I'll kind of linger here so that we give folks a chance to get their phones out if they'd like. I guess I'll lob a question to you, Neil, that, is a common one that we're getting a little bit. And that is, since we are switching the check stations to sampling stations, there's concern that we're losing out on critical harvest data that we collect. Could you explain for folks a little bit about, how we collect harvest data and what role those check stations play for us primarily?
Sure. Yeah, we get a little bit of harvest information from the check stations, but really what it is, it's kind of a snapshot of what we think might be happening in the season. We get the bulk of our information, at least the information we use in terms of assessing seasons and assessing populations, from the harvest surveys. So those are those call-in surveys that you get, and they ask you whether you harvested a deer or an elk. That's where we get the bulk of our information. I think folks have to remember that the check stations only typically ran for 2 days. And so we didn't get the entire picture of what was happening in the region or even in the hunting district from those check stations. What we did get from those check stations, though, was age and contact with the sportsman. And I think through running these CWD sampling stations, we can still get that. So as animals come in, we'll still be collecting teeth. We'll still be aging those bucks, especially that come in, and we'll still have contact with the sportsman. So I think the valuable parts of a game check station that we had before are still in place. But yeah, we won't be, I think folks can be used to seeing those news articles which talk about a percentage of animals hunters with game. We won't be able to do that. So we will miss out on that a little bit, but I think overall, in terms of what we gain for chronic waste and disease surveillance and potentially management, I'm hoping that outweighs those weekly news articles that talk about hunter success.
Great. Thank you, Neil. And it looks like we do have somebody who called in and their phone number is ending in 530. So I'm going to unmute you and give you a chance to ask your question. So phone number ending in 530, if you want to unmute your phone, and feel free to ask any questions you have.
You may have to remind them again how to unmute.
Yeah, the unmute, I think it's *6 here. I can unmute you as well. Let's see if I unmute you, if that works for you. There you go.
Hi. Hi, this is Joni Howard. I am on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Region 1.
Yeah, hey, Joni.
Hi. I had a question. Now I think I forgot what it was. Oh, my gosh. Trying to deal with all this headgear and stuff here. How did you want us to bring in people to bring heads in or samples in?
Sure.
Great question.
Yep, that's a great question. Thanks, Joni. So if you happen to be traveling by one of the CWD sampling stations, just like you did at a game check station, you can just pull in there. Even if you have the entire carcass, we have folks there that can take those samples right there. So before you even...
Okay. Should they be, since it's only open on weekends, should they be frozen or chilled or?
Nope. So what we're trying to do, Joni, is try to catch folks just like we did with the game check stations, catch people as they're coming onto the field to give them an opportunity to right there. If you can't make it there, though, Mondays they will be open as well. You can actually go to those sampling stations at any time. So say even if you went home and you weren't in an area or you didn't go by one of those sampling stations, you can go there. All we ask is that people don't pull directly into the station, go by it, and turn around and come in so you're going the same direction as traffic that might be pulling in for safety reasons.
Sure.
So you can bring the head in. We don't want it frozen. We can't take tissue out of frozen heads. So you can go to those sampling stations or you can come into the office here in Kalispell. and we will try to take those as quickly as we can. If you have a buck that you want to save the antlers on, if you're going to skull plate it, we recommend you do that before you bring it in. But if you want something that's going to be a European mount, what we're going to try to do is take the samples immediately when you get there so you can take that animal home with you. So I guess to answer the question, fresh is best. Yep. The fresher the
Okay,
better.
so if we get one on a Tuesday, for instance, nobody's open till the weekend. So what do you do with them?
Nobody's open in some of those outlying areas, but Kalispell is open. And actually, if you can just keep that thing cool, you can bring it to the sampling station, and we'll take them when we can. See that the tissues won't, like I say, that prion is pretty hardy. So as long as you keep it fairly cold or cool, we can still collect those tissues. You also have the opportunity to collect them yourself if you go onto our webpage. There's a site there that'll show you how to do it if you're concerned about having to hang on to that head for a while. Typically, a lot of folks
so
here,
we can.
Go ahead.
So we can look online and find out. I looked online last year and actually located them. So we could remove them ourselves and keep them cool in a bag and bring them in.
Yep, you could keep them cool in a bag, bring them in, or you could even send them in yourself. There's a form and information on how to mail them in. We're hoping.
Perfect.
We're hoping to try to catch the most active days or the most likely days that folks would be out, given that a lot of folks, work and stuff. So weekends are the probably the most active time folks are out hunting. And by doing that Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, we're hoping we could also allow folks an opportunity if they miss the station or the sampling station to come in on Monday.
Great. Thank you for this is very informative tonight. Is this Mr. Tabish?
No, that was Neil. I wish I could take credit for knowing everything Neil does, but no, that was Neil, and this is Dillon.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Dillon. Okay.
Hey,
Well,
Joni.
thank you very much.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Those are great questions, and Neil brought up a good point. All of this information, including videos on how to collect samples, where the sampling stations are located, it's all on our website. If you go to the FWP website, or if you just type in fwp.mt.gov/CWD, and that's hopefully a useful resource for folks to find all this information.
Great. We have a handicap sheet from vehicle for myself, and we got assigned a gate to go up behind here from the Forest Service for opening day. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, cool. Well, good luck. Yeah, hopefully
Good luck.
you'll be able to get around. There's supposed to be some snow coming.
All right. Thank you much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Joni. Have a great weekend. Good luck out there.
Yep.
So I want to leave a chance for any others. Great questions from Joni, Howard, and Troy. And again, if you have questions, call in on that number there, and happy to answer them for you. I'll just pause a little bit longer and see if there's any questions out there.
Yep, there's some great sources of data out there, information, like I said, on our webpage. So I'd really encourage folks to take a look at that. Gives you a pretty good idea of what we're doing statewide. I know we have a lot of folks that travel to other parts of the state to hunt. And so there's surveillance occurring in other areas. I know the Dillon area, so down by Bozeman, Dillon area, they have a surveillance area down there as well. So if you want to go out to a different area, though, you go out to eastern Montana or southwest Montana, you harvest an animal, and you don't hit one of their sampling stations or check stations, we'll still take those samples up here. We'll help you out. Be glad to help you out. So you can stop at one of the sampling stations or at the Kalispell office, and even though it wasn't harvested in northwest Montana, if you need to get the samples out, we'll help you.
Yeah, that's great. Neil, I'm going to share my screen and show folks for the website where they can find stuff. So this is for anybody who is unfamiliar with our website. If you go here to our main FWP website, right over here, you're going to see big CWD. section. And so everything about CWD is within this section of the website. So it does a little bit of an explanation of what it is. If you'd like to read Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Management Plan, here's our management plan that you can download and read. And then here is kind of some breakdown of kind of what Neil talked about tonight about what's new in 2020. About sample submission is completely voluntary across Montana. Information on the carcass transportation, restrictions going away and the proper disposal. And then these are kind of the main areas you want to look for. So if you're wondering about how to get your animal sampled, where to sample or where to send it, click on this one right here. This is a great video. Dr. Jennifer Ramsey, our wildlife veterinarian, goes through and kind of shows people how to collect that sample. And so you can really kind of get some good information from that. And then down here, here's just some information on sampling. Then here, if you do submit your samples and you're looking for your test results, this is where you're going to want to go right here. You click on this and it downloads a PDF, and you can kind of see this is where that information is going to be posted. If you do have a positive animal, we will reach out to you directly. So it's one of those things, I guess. No news is good news. If you don't hear from us, that's a good sign. If your animal does come back positive, though, we will be reaching out to you directly, and those test results will also be posted on there.
Hey, Dillon, you want to go back to that?
Yeah.
So when folks come to the sampling stations, and when we take your sample, we give you a card that looks very much like the one with an arrow there. And it's got a number down in the corner. It says CWD, and this one has XXX. That's your sample number. So that's what you look for when you go onto if you want to scroll down. That's what you look for on the table. And so
you can kind of see those
track
ones.
these samples, and that's how you can identify whether your animal is positive or negative.
Yep. All right. Carcass disposal. This is just a good reminder, and you'll start seeing these signs hopefully all over the place. We're really making an effort, like Neil said, to educate people about why we really need them to properly dispose of those carcasses, because it could be contaminating new areas by dumping these carcasses in the woods, and we really want to avoid that. So this one's an interesting one from folks who are kind of wondering, as the season progresses, where we might be having positives. This map up here on the top shows our sampling and test results, and so you can see this one is through October 20th. The red dots are where we've picked up positives in the last 3 years. The kind of fainter ones here, I can enlarge this map. These ones you can see, the tan or peach colored ones, is where we've at least gotten samples. And so as Neil mentioned, we're trying to get more samples in this Northwest Montana corner, because as you can see, we've gotten a good amount right around Libby, but we'd like to kind of sample further out. So this map will be updated throughout the season, as you can kind of follow along how our sampling efforts are going. And then this one down here shows you again where Neil had described priority surveillance areas and where we're trying to collect more samples. Again, it's all voluntary, so hunters, it's their choice if they want to get their animals sampled. But in these areas that are highlighted, we're really encouraging you to, so that we can help get more data. And then here, I guess really relevant for Libby folks who may have bought that over-the-counter tag, that over-the-counter white-tailed deer tag that Neil mentioned. Here is your map. So where is it? Libby CWD zone. I've emailed this map to everybody who's got it, who I can get an email address from, who bought that license. But for those who don't and need this map to remember where the boundaries are, here it is right here. So you can get this map by going to the management page and then scrolling down, and there you'll see Libby CWD management zone. And that map, is really handy. If you have a smartphone, you can save this to your smartphone, and it's I forget the name of the term, I guess, but you can import that if you have a mapping app, such as I think Venza, and other ones like that. So just good reference for you there. But then this page also has just more information about how we're trying to manage chronic wasting disease and reduce its spread here. And gosh, I'm kind of just trying to delay to see if there's any more questions out there, Neil, but I don't see any.
Well, and if folks have questions, if something comes to them later, they can sure call the office. We'd be glad to talk to them. Try to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, or if they just have general questions about CWD, how to submit a sample, any of that, we're glad to help.
Yeah, and here on this Get Sampled page down here, I don't know if this has been populated yet. It hasn't. So tomorrow, before hunting season starts, this sampling stations is going to list across the state where you can stop if you'd like to get your animal sampled. And so, for example, here in Region 1, it's going to show the Libby location on Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays, only Thompson Falls. So anywhere you go across the state, if you need to know where's there going to be a sampling station, this is right here is going to have it all. So we'll have that populated before the season gets going. But yeah, like Neil mentioned, if you have questions, please feel free to call our regional office or whatever region you're in. Give the regional office a call and they'll help you out. And with that, I guess that's all we've got for you here. Thanks again to everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.
And this meeting will be posted and shared on our Facebook page. And wishing you a happy, safe hunting season.
Yep. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, Neil.
Yep. Thank you.